Okay, I'm going to go through kitchen table regurgitation. This was done on August 7th, 2023. This was after she posted on Reddit that she was an expert in this case. She studied it for years and she's read all the transcripts. She knows this case back and forth. But I'm going to see how long I can let this go where she talks about case related stuff before I catch her in something that she got wrong. Won't take long.
Another thing I want to state that was just a mistake done by the Rowlett PD is that booties were never worn at the scene. So this would have.
How's that a mistake done at the Rowlett PD? Let me see. Waddell pulls up to a stabbing. He sees a guy in the yard. But before he draws his gun on that guy in the yard, he says, "Hold on." And he goes to his trunk and he puts booties on his feet. Then he says, "Now you freeze." Then when Walling got there, Darlie was going, he went out in the garage, he went out. Walling said, "Hold that thought." And he went back to his cruiser and put booties on. The paramedics did the same thing. When they pulled up, instead of running in to try and save somebody's life, they stopped and put booties on their feet. Because that's the most important thing, right? Is to preserve the evidence, right? Wrong. The most important thing is to clear the scene. The second most important thing is to get medical attention to the victims. She's a clown.
Answered Catherine Long's contradictory testimony if they had worn booties, because they could have then tested the booties for blood and other trace evidence.
I think Waddell was putting his booties on the way to the scene. He was trying to drive and put his booties on at the same time. Because he heard stabbing, and he wasn't thinking save victims. He heard stabbing, he was thinking preserve the evidence. That's the first thing that came to his mind.
Another thing, Darlie's family believed that her necklace saved her life. And honestly, I believe that as
That's because you're going to believe anything Darlie's family wants you to believe. They don't want you out here spewing that Darin did it, though.
well. So she had almost a choker gold chain on, and considering her carotid artery was only 2 millimeters from being cut, which if it was, she would have bled out.
Right, and if a tree fell in the backyard and went through the roof and onto the couch, she almost died then, too. And if lightning would have struck the house and went through the roof and onto the couch, she almost died then, too, except for neither one of those things happened.
And died on the scene. That necklace could have been at least 2 millimeters long.
Could have been.
And it was lodged.
There we go. It was lodged
in her wound, and they had to surgically remove it.
See, this is where Dummy doesn't read. First of all, it's made perfectly clear that necklace was embedded in, it was stuck in coagulable, it's a hard word to say, coagulated blood, and they took it off of her just before she went into surgery. There's testimony on that, and there's also Darlie's own words that they took her necklace off of her before she went into surgery. This is just Susan Sarandon bullshit that they heard. When Susan Sarandon did a show on this, she said the necklace was so deeply embedded into the wound that they had to take her to emergency surgery to have it removed. It wasn't embedded, and it wasn't emergency surgery. Clown, this one.
So a lot of people think that they just bandaged it up.
They did just bandage it up. And if you read the testimony, when they took her out to the porch, I think it was Byford was messing with that necklace, trying to get the necklace off of her, and she grimaced a little bit, so he just put a bandage on it.
when they bandaged her throat wound, but in actuality, they had to surgically remove the chain. So
In actuality, one of the things that you'll hear somebody lie when they lie, they'll say actually, or in actuality, or honestly.
we'll put a picture up of this so that you guys can kind of see what we're talking about. I'm not quite sure if we hit on this in the last episode, but when the paramedics get there, and unfortunately, Devin is dead on the scene. One of our theories about Darlie's shirt and the blood splatter that Tom Bevel testified was Darlie lifting the knife up and stabbing Devin is that Byford, so he's an EMT Byford works on Devin first, but as we stated, unfortunately, when the paramedics got there, he was dead on scene. So a lot of paramedics, we pop our gloves off in the medical community a certain way to prevent us from getting bloodborne.
We. She's saying we in the medical field. And she's not in the medical field. We pop our gloves off.
Illnesses, keeping things clean and sanitized. And so you reach one finger under a glove and you take it off upside down. And the next one that you do, it kind of makes a popping sound and it can shoot small amounts of blood out. If
Nope.
The gloves without getting body fluids or contaminants that might be on the gloves on yourself. So what I'm going to do is have an assistant come over and put some shaving cream on the gloves, and we'll go through the removal procedure with the shaving cream as a teaching tool to teach students to remove the gloves without getting any of the shaving cream on their hands. So we'll take a small glob of shaving cream, rub it around both hands, and then we're going to try to remove the gloves without getting shaving cream onto my skin. So the first glove comes off by folding it inside out. Now we're holding the first glove inside the second glove. We'll remove the second glove by folding that over the first glove. Dispose of the gloves in an appropriate receptacle. Unless something is totally soaked with blood, in most states in the United States, it's not necessary to put them into a red bag. They can go into ordinary garbage, but they shouldn't just be thrown aside because they potentially have exposure to infectious material on them. And after you've taken the gloves off, you're again going to do hand hygiene. So we'll put some hand gel on.
So there we have it from a real paramedic. You can see that she described that wrong. How you got to pinch into the wrist or whatever. She described it totally wrong. And one of the first things that she failed to mention about putting gloves on in the medical field is that you sanitize your hands first.
if you were to do that. So if he was changing gloves and working on Darlie at the same time, when he popped that glove off, it could have sprayed blood that UC Bevel testified to on Darlie.
Except for he didn't pop that glove off. He could have. She started this episode out by saying, we're going to let you know what's speculation and what's fact. And that's speculation. That the paramedic wasn't trained properly in how to remove his gloves, like the gentleman just showed us a minute ago.
Lee's right shoulder. So I don't know if we talked about that, but I did want to bring that up. Another correction is that 574 people have been killed on death row. I said something like 1,000 the other day. Another thing I want to talk about is the blood on Darlie's shirt. If you
Here we go with this blood on Darlie's shirt.
go look at it, which we posted the front and back of her shirt. So on the right shoulder, you can see the blood that we've been talking about that was Devin's. That is what Bevel said. Okay, Darlie pulled the knife up and it's cast off that landed on the back of her right shoulder. If you look at the back of Darlie's shirt, however, she must have been laying down with her head facing the sofa, as we talked about, because the way that the blood.
You can talk about that all you want because James Cron asked her to draw a picture of the way that she was laying. And she was laying on her back, according to Darlie. The picture with no eyes in it.
Pooled, you can see that she was laying down and then she stood up. You can also see where there was contamination. We talked about that the EMTs threw her shirt into a brown paper bag.
Okay, so what did it contaminate? Where's the contamination? You're going on the fact that they put it in a brown Albertson bag, and you're saying it's contaminated, but you're not showing where it's contaminated, what contaminated it, how it was contaminated.
And it got saturated. So you can literally line up the folds on the back where that shirt got contaminated. And
the folds on the back are what some people believe is a bloody knife print. And if you fold it straight over, it shows a bloody knife print.
And I will put a picture up and label these things on Darlie's shirts so that you guys can visually see what I'm talking about. I'm sorry that was a little lengthy and wordy, but we are going to go on to the suspects, and Jones is going to give us our first suspect.
The first suspect is the most obvious suspect, is Darin. Before the crimes ever happened, he had run an insurance scam on his...
No. Where's the proof of this? The reason that Darin was a suspect is because he was the only one in the house that was uninjured.
vehicle, meaning that he had somebody steal his vehicle.
Where's your evidence of this? Where is the police report? Where is the insurance payout? Because we've looked for this stuff and it's not there. See, it's not there. They lived on Bond Street when that Jaguar was supposed to have been stolen. And in order to collect an insurance payout, there has to be a police report. And there is none.
Filed the insurance against it. The insurance company paid him off.
Now she's saying the insurance company paid him off, but they have no proof of that. Now think about this, though. Think about this. My wife has a car. Let's put it this way. And she comes home one day and she doesn't have that car. Then she tells me somebody stole it. So my first thing will be, hey, you have to call the police about that. But then they get a payout. My wife gets this payout, comes up with this money. But I didn't know anything about it. Here's the thing. All right. He paid $10,800 for the second Jaguar that he had. Cash money. The first Jaguars that they claim couldn't have cost any more than that or any less. All right, so let's say he buys a $10,000 car and he insures it. All right. What are they going to pay out on a used car? It would be easier to just sell the fucking car. This never happened.
You know, some months later, he goes and retrieves his car because he knows where that's at.
He goes and retrieves his car. And where's he put it? See, because he got an insurance payout for it, right? The last thing he'd want to do is be caught driving around in that car.
And so he makes money and gets his own car back. So that's what an insurance scam was.
Yeah. Good job. That's what a story of hearsay is all about, y'all. They have no evidence of any of this. The people that came closest to having evidence of this is myself when I spoke with Beja. Because Beja clarified that this actually happened. Okay? And that Darlie knew about it. And that they got the insurance money and the car sits in Hamilton, Ohio.
looks like. Did Darlie even know about that scam? Was she
How could she not have?
left clueless, or did Darin discuss it with her? Some years after the trial is when Darin admits to setting that car insurance scam up. There's a 5-year.
He doesn't admit to setting that car insurance scam up. What he says is, I told a person that I wouldn't care if that car came up missing, and that person took it. Where's the insurance scam part at?
Statute of limitations on insurance fraud, and so he got by with it. The crime. Let's assume that there are burglars coming into the Routier house. The plan is for them to pick up things of value, run an insurance scam on them. Darin gets paid.
Okay, so what things of value were laying around that the intruder picked up? What is? Nothing.
Paid for it, and oh, by the way, that allows him to get that $5,000 loan that he wanted so bad to be able to take on vacation.
He didn't want it so bad. Darlie wanted it so bad, and when they couldn't get it, that's another one of the things that pissed her off.
So did the burglars end up with the wrong date? Maybe it was supposed to be June 16th instead of June 6th.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. So those burglars must have forgot the date, right? They also forgot one very important thing. A fucking U-Haul truck to move shit out with.
Because the Routiers were supposed to fly to Pennsylvania on June the 14th. Did somebody mess that all up? No one was supposed to be injured. No one was supposed to be at home.
Yeah, because you know who talked about it, right?
But when the intruder or intruders entered the house, there are 3 people downstairs, all likely.
Okay, so nobody was supposed to be in the house. They got the date wrong, and nobody's supposed to be in the house. So when they go in the house and they see the people, that's when they know that they got the date wrong, and they can just leave.
To be potential witnesses. Darin's car, which is usually parked out front, is in the shop.
Darin's car was usually kept in the back. It's Darlie's car that's parked in the front. And if you look at listen to the testimony, Darin says he always parks his car in a certain Darlie's car, the Nissan Pathfinder, in a certain spot, so people can't go around that bend like they're crazy. So he puts his car in a certain spot in front of the house.
Darlie's car, which is usually parked in the back
Wrong.
driveway, and I have conflicting information about where Darlie's car was parked. Darin says it was in front of the house. William Gorsuch, who's their neighbor, says he sees it. Darlie and Helena say that Darlie's car was parked in the back driveway so that no one, as they drove by the front street, is going to appear to be at home that night. If these guys were running an insurance scam, there's kind of some messy pieces in there. Is
Yeah, there's a lot of messy pieces in that whole story.
this a reason that Darlie may have left her jewelry out on the kitchen counter?
No. Darlie left her jewelry out on the kitchen counter to be clean because she was going to sell it. She's going to sell it for $10,000.
That night. If she knew about the insurance scam, would it have been easy for a guy to swoop that up and sell it for whatever he could
But they didn't.
get for it?
So the insurance scam could be one of Darin's motives or a way to be responsible for the crime, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, he wouldn't be responsible for the actual crime because he didn't stab the boys.
Sure he would be. Because he's not naming the people that he asked to come in the house. And see, the family doesn't push him to do that. They use little cronies like you guys to play speculation about Darin so that the general public thinks that maybe Darin did this or had something to do with it. Poor Darlie. The insurance affidavit is a scam. That's a scam. That's all faked for the sake of Darlie.
But if it was an insurance scam, he certainly set that up.
And you said he admitted it to setting up an insurance scam 5 years after Darlie went to prison?
That's right.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. I'll go through this 100 times if I have to. Now, this says nothing about an insurance scam. He just says that someone stole his car. Well, did he call the police? Nope. So what did Robbie Jean Key say to him after he asked him that question? Do you know anybody that will break into my house on an insurance scam? What was his answer to that? I said that I would arrange for my family to be absent. Now this is not an admittance. This is him saying, I said that I would arrange if he knew someone. Then I'll arrange for my family to be absent, blah, blah, blah. So according to the theory of the insurance scam, here's our killer. This was left out of their first initial written statements, that there was an argument that night where she asked for a marital separation. They left that out conveniently.
I can't believe he waited that long.
Let me back up. Darlie Key's now ex-husband, so she and Denny divorce, okay? Denny comes forward. I don't know whether it was to Darlie Key or exactly who he told, but he comes forward and says, there's this little bell ringing in my...
Now look, she said, Denny comes forward to say that.
head about Darin mentioning that he thought he needed to have some money. Barry Fife was his go-to man for insurance scams, and we're going to cover Barry here in a minute.
Well, where do you get Barry Fife at? Even Darin didn't say that.
So Denny waited until 5 years after the trial to bring it up, and then Darin admitted it?
Yes.
Denny didn't wait till 5 years after the trial at all. Denny is not the one that brought it up. Robbie Jean Key is. Denny had nothing to do with any part of any talk of insurance scam. Denny is the one with sticky fingers that likes little kids. Robbie Jean Key is the convicted grand theft person who had a stolen vehicle on his property in 1991.
I wonder why he never brought it up. I mean, he must have thought about it all the time.
Well, no, he didn't bring it up because it wasn't appeals time. At appeals time for Darlie, right around the time that she was going to go for a good appeal, he suddenly remembered. You know what? This motherfucker asked me if he knew. He suddenly remembered that. Isn't that convenient?
He must have. Because if all the insurance scam stuff is true, and if the perpetrators entered the house with the intention of committing an insurance scam, because I think the perpetrators thought the house was empty. There's no cars, there's no lights on, they walk in the back door, they see Darlie laying on the couch. She wants me to tell you that she believes that Darlie's car was parked in the back and that double confirms to the perpetrators that nobody was home. Now, Darin and Gorsuch say that Darlie's car was parked exactly where it always is, which is on the curve in front of the house. So, I don't know what the truth is. Anna says that Darin confessed to the insurance scam to her in jail in 2011, and that is around the time that she divorces him. So I think more information.
He visited her in jail in 2011. He'd only been to see her a few times. He stopped going to see her way before the divorce. But Darin did not tell her about no insurance scam at a visit.
Came forward at that time, and maybe Darin finally admits it. You know, he's been visiting her often in jail, and maybe when she figures out that he was running an insurance scam and her two boys had been killed, she decides that Darin is not worth the time of day and files for divorce.
It's crazy. Sirota told me that Darlie had sent divorce papers 3 times before Darin signed them. And that she wanted a divorce before the murders. You guys are clowns, man.
I mean, I just can't imagine, like, going to visit your wife on death row all the time, knowing that you have information that could potentially have exonerated her, and you kept silent that whole time.
Yeah, poor Darlie. Yeah.
It's just disgusting. Even if this is all just a theory and it's not true,
Right.
for him to have held back this information for so long is just disgusting.
Right. And, that means...
You guys are out here blaming everybody. I've been accused of the crime by the family. You're blaming everybody for this crime. This guy, Glenn Mize, Barry Five, William Gorsuch, kid down the street, the nun that lived over here. But none of the family is doing, if they believe that this was an insurance scam gone wrong, that family should be taking all their energy that they spend telling lies on the internet to fuck Darin over so he will name these people. As a matter of fact, if Darin doesn't name these people, he's actually committed a crime. Right? See, his affidavit, there's nothing illegal in his affidavit at all. I said I wouldn't mind if my car came up missing. That person stole it. He didn't say anything about collecting insurance on that. I asked multiple people.
Means that nobody ever investigated any of Darlie's story because they didn't believe it. But Darin kind of confirms that if I'm running an insurance scam, then those perpetrators were in my house.
So does he have any other motives or, like, things that he could have been involved with that would have led to the crime?
I don't think so, Johnson. He and Darlie...
Just, point 2 is her life insurance policy. I was trying to give you a segue.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, segue. Darlie also, Darin had taken out a $250,000 life insurance policy. I kind of hate to say this out loud, but Darin lacks judgment. Let's put it that way.
Because he married Darlie's ass.
There's a cocaine angle that might be part of this story. Officer Patterson and Chad, his son, are going to be on our list of suspects.
Can you remind me who
Officer Patterson. No, he's lead detective Patterson. These people are gonna be on our list. We don't know them, we've never studied anything about them, but they're gonna be on our list.
Patterson is again? Sorry, there's just like so many people from the trial.
Jimmy Patterson was not the first on the scene, but he was shortly at the scene. He was a captain in the Rowlett Police Department.
He was a detective in the Rowlett Police Department. The captain was not named Jimmy Patterson. The captain was named Valera or something like that.
And he became the chief investigating officer for the crime.
No, he became the lead detective. He's never an officer. He's a lieutenant today.
So Jimmy's there about
The lead officer was actually Sergeant Walling.
3:30 in the morning.
But like the main guy in charge of the investigation and his son are going to be suspects.
Why?
Do you remember when we talked about Patterson pleading the fifth?
Yes.
Did he plead the fifth because he didn't want to be questioned? And that certainly got him out of being questioned.
No, it didn't. He didn't plead. He pled the fifth because he didn't want to be questioned about the secret recording. And that's the only thing that the judge said, we're not going to talk about that after he pled the fifth. They chose not to question him about anything else after that.
Now, let's talk.
Ooh, we're getting like down and dirty with these suspects.
We are. We're getting pretty nasty.
Oh, yeah, we're getting down and dirty. So Jimmy Patterson and Chad, they're suspects. That's down and dirty. You didn't give any reason why.
And you know, again, we have to say that these are theories, but when we sit back in a group and we talk about these as the podcast creators, you come up with things that you really never thought about, but that somebody else did. So it's very interesting.
Okay, well, tell me about the cocaine then.
Okay, that rumors are circulating that Darin was using and selling cocaine. Perhaps
Rumors that he's using and selling it? Where do these rumors happen? These rumors happen by people like you that sit in here. They used cocaine.
out of test neck. Okay? My idea would be that Darlie had no idea if in fact Darin was selling and using cocaine. Darlie had a negative tox screen other than the fen that showed up when they did her lab work prior to her going to
So did Darin.
the surgical suite. Interestingly enough, there is no tox screen that was ever performed on Darin. So we don't know if he'd snorted a line before the crimes or anything like that. And
Yeah, because snorting a line of cocaine makes you immediately want to kill your family.
interesting, why didn't they run a tox screen on him? We know that the effects of coke do not make you go absolutely bonkers. I thought something that was interesting. We knew that Darin had called Barb, so that's his technician at Testneck, while they were on the way to the hospital. We know that Terry Neal is driving Darlie's Pathfinder. We know that Darin called Darlie Key, Mama Key.
I'm sorry, who is Terry Neal again?
Terry Neal is their catty corner neighbor.
Oh, that's right. So Darin went to him after the crime to like change and
Right,
stuff.
washed his face. They walk out together. According to them, Darin's car's in the front. They go to the car. They get jumped in. The police will not supposedly let Darin back into the house, but I've read two different versions of that story too. So,
Well, there's one part that he went up to the door and they wouldn't let him in. And then he went back a second time and he was able to walk through the house, the kitchen and all of it. 2 different times.
so let's assume that he and Terry jump into Darlie's Pathfinder on the way to the hospital. They didn't know yet where they were really going. Interesting. This
Sure, they knew where they were going. They told him that she was going to Baylor.
is 1996. I guess Darin has a cell phone. And, you know, those were those big old bags that people had to carry around with their cell phone in it. So that's kind of interesting.
Did they have a car phone maybe?
Well, and, you know, did Darlie have a car phone in her car? I don't know that. There's never been any information about Darlie's car. So Terry Neal is driving. Let's assume, obviously, that Darin's in the passenger seat. So he calls Mama Darlie to tell her what's going on, and that as soon as he knows the hospital, he'll call her back. And the second person that he calls is Barbara, his technician, to go into test neck so that she can open up that morning.
You know, the one that they had a falling out, that one.
Is that not weird? He calls a technician who works for him to say, go to my office, you have a key, let's go ahead and open test neck for the day, when his 2 children and his wife is in serious condition.
Well, his 2 children, yeah, let's blame Darin. His 2 children and his wife are in serious condition. He probably called Beja to tell her what happened. But you can't just close down a computer business. Business still had to go on. I mean, he's got funerals and stuff to pay for now.
Well, maybe if he was doing an insurance scam that night, he was desperate for money and money's the first thing on his mind. Or maybe he was like, yo, Barb, you got to hide my Coke.
Exactly. And that's...
Actually, Darlie asked Beja to get the Coke and hide the Coke in the hospital. And that comes from Beja herself.
You know, of course, Darin's never admitted to anything, and so we don't know the story. We don't know if there was cocaine hidden over at test neck.
A little while ago, they said Darin admitted. Darin confessed. Darin admitted to it. And now they said he never admitted to anything.
There's no indication that Darlie knew anything about the drugs, if in fact that's true. So then we get into money laundering, because Barbara testifies that Darin overcharges his clients. The year before, in 1995, Darin reported $200,000 in income for the year, and he was on target to make that much money in 1996. He was a little bit behind schedule, and that's why he had gone to the bank to ask for the loan, and we've already talked about that.
He went to the bank to ask for a loan. There's 2 different stories. One is for a trip to Cancun or the trip to Pennsylvania. 2, the family says that they tried to get a loan to help Dana buy a truck.
Do you think maybe Darlie found out Darin was like cooking the books or laundering cocaine money through the business and he hired someone to kill her?
Maybe. And Darlie would have known if those books were being cooked. I mean, she was the bookkeeper for test neck. And oftentimes, now that she was home with the kids for the summer and that Drake was such a small baby, it seems to me like she was probably doing those books from the home. I don't think she went into test neck very often. And so for the summer, she was supposedly doing the books at home. And did she go, ding dong, I just found that Darin's selling Coke and cooking the books, you know?
Oh, God.
I don't know.
You know, it sounds to me like it's a crazy, like, Ozark kind of theory, but 200K, if they made 200K in 96, that's only like under 400K today. They lived a lifestyle that was far above that level. So you wonder where they got that money.
Right.
How did they How did they live a lifestyle that was far above 200K? He had a $130,000 house. They had a fairly new Nissan Pathfinder. They had a used Jaguar. How are they living beyond their means? Everybody says they're living beyond their means, but then they go on and say, well, Darlie paid for this person's mortgage, and she would buy dinner for all the kids and everything, take the kids to the movies. But then they go on about Darin being above his means.
Why, as a wife, wouldn't you go, we've been eating out a whole lot. We've been eating a whole lot of fancy meals. Darin, is the office making that much money? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, instead of her doing that, Darin, where are you now? Are we making enough money? Darin. Instead of doing that, she says, Darin, I want a $6,000 fountain out front. I want a $9,000 steam house in the back. And these drapes, they're $12,000. I need you to pay for those too. That's all Darlie stuff.
It in the books, you know?
Right, and I just keep going back to those $16,000 Armani drapes just in the living room. Like,
Right.
They were $12,000 drapes, and that's what Darlie wanted. They're still in the house today.
that's like Kim Kardashian money, you
Yes.
know?
Yes,
Where
it
are they
is.
getting this money?
Darren said that it took him 18 months to pay off the $12,000 drapes. Says that on the stand.
Or how much debt are they in?
You know, and maybe, you know, in today's money, if you're making $400,000, then $16,000 Armani drapes makes sense. It doesn't to me, but it did, but it did to Darlie and Darin, and we know they liked nice things. We know that they were spending money.
Yeah, I guess they were young.
And yes, now the house, I looked up the house. They bought the house for about $130,000, brand new, which even in today's world is a little chunk of change. But in 1996, a $130,000 house was, you know, kind of an upscale house, but it's not the most expensive house in Rowlett. So, you know, there's this back and forth about money. They were both admitted that they were overspending, but they were having the time of their lives and they were loving their lifestyle. So, you know, maybe it was worth it to them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of weird, isn't it?
So did he have any other shady things going on besides cocaine, money laundering, and insurance scams?
It's all stuff that you guys came
There
up with.
couldn't possibly be more. Please tell me there's not more.
There is more.
Oh boy.
More. There are also rumors that floated around during the trial and since then that Darin and Darlie's 16-year-old sister were possibly having an affair. There's also
Dawn was 16?
Dawn was 16, Danielle was 12.
Dawn. Oh, they have a sister named Dawn. I didn't know about that. Thanks for informing us. I'm glad that you do the research so I don't have to, because I never knew that Darlie had a sister named Dawn. I'm so glad I ran across this podcast.
Oh my God. I'm not even faking this. I did not know she was 16.
Yeah, she's 16.
And I think he said his motive was, or it was speculated that his motive was just like he had this affair, so he just wanted to start over with a new family.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Wouldn't that be nice? I'm tired of this. I'd like to start over.
Okay, well, the next thing is Dawn's drive that is suspicious.
And, you know, Rowlett to Garland, I don't know how long that takes. I imagine you
I'm calling Dana Dawn and Denny as Robbie Key.
are going to go on LBJ Freeway, but it's in the evening, it's on a weekday. I would not expect there would be thousands of traffics, you know. So it took 45 minutes. I'd love to run that and just see how long that drive actually took.
We did. It's 12 to 14
minutes.
Yes.
So okay, so let's take the big one. 14 plus 14 back is 28 minutes. Darlie says it took him about 45 minutes. I guess you can have sex in 15 minutes if that's the way you want to look at it.
God. Look, now they're accusing these family members that are victims of having sex with each other that they can't even get their name right in 15 minutes time.
So there is that point of contention out there.
So you're talking about when Darin drove Dawn home the night of the crime.
I'm so glad I ran across this kitchen table research so I wouldn't have to do the research myself. And here I found out that Darlie has a sister named Dawn.
Correct.
I think Sully threw out a couple theories, like maybe he was passing along coke or doing coke drops, or maybe they were planning the break-in that night.
Interesting. So let's say he takes Dawn home and then he stops at his cocaine spot to finalize the plans to
Oh, yeah. This is so fucking ridiculous that these people disrespect Devin and Damon this way.
come into his own house. Or he has a cocaine drop at somebody's house and he runs by there to do that, puts a couple $100 cash in his pocket, and then goes home and nobody's the wiser.
Yeah.
Or maybe Dawn was in on it because they were having an affair. And
Now, maybe Darlie's sister was in on it with Darin.
they were planning the attack.
Maybe so. I mean, that it could be. It's not the first time we've had women killers. Also, rumors about Darin having an affair with Darlie's mother.
Well, at least she can consent.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's a good point. Because a 16-year-old, if you're having intercourse with, is obviously considered rape.
It's also considered that child abuse and child molesting or gross sexual imposition when you at 8, you're a grown man and you're fondling an 8-year-old little girl, and molesting her. That's a crime. But, that's Denny, so we can't tell on him.
Well, actually, I don't know. In 90s Texas, maybe not.
Oh, it was. We don't do sex in Texas.
You don't have sex in Texas.
I don't have sex in Texas. Therefore, there can be no rape.
Well, it's gross either way.
It is, and it's disgusting if it's true. I don't think it's true, but we felt like we had to report that part because it's not widely, it is rumored that is true. One of the other rather off-the-wall theories that came out is, people said that Darin didn't do this because that's not what people do. And yet, 3 years ago or whatever it was in Aurora, we have Chris Watts who kills his 2 children, stuffs his wife in the back, dumps them into oil containers, and tries to get away with it. And of course, he was having an affair as well. Interesting.
All right, so that has to be the end of his possible motives, right?
No, no, not yet. Let's talk about the divorce angle. Darlie and Darin really portray their marriage as good. Everything that we know about it appears to be good. However, as it evolved,
aside from the stuff we just talked about.
Yes, aside from any of the rumors we just talked about, once Darlie was convicted, she never turned on Darin. She never said that Darin was involved. She never implicates Darin.
Is she protecting the killer? Because there's no way that a wife wouldn't know if her husband was into these type of things that they're talking about.
But come to find out, she was talking to Darin about a possible divorce that night before they went to bed.
She didn't talk to him about it. She said she wanted a fucking separation. And why didn't she put that in her first report?
Now, Darin says, it's just one of those little comments that you say if you don't straighten up and start
Darin never said that. Darin never said what she's going on.
helping me out in the house and start taking care of the kids, why don't we just divorce? Because you're not getting it.
Darin never gives this explanation. This is the explanation that they're giving.
You're not giving me any marriage support. That came out about, Anna says, when Kathy Cruz's book was released. So if that's true, and they corroborate that, then Darlie says she's in jail.
No, it had to be during the trial because that was like their whole thing. They were like, they were fighting that night and she went berserk.
But they did not mention divorce because she said no, there was no...
Well, the prosecution did is what I meant.
Right, okay, I get that.
She did mention separation.
So in 2011, Darin and Darlie talked about truly divorcing. Darlie's quote at that time is that I don't even know what to think about Darin anymore. So she's been confronted with some of these theories.
She didn't divorce him because of theories. One thing is it's really hard for Darin to come there and see her, right? And he would get emotional, blah, blah, blah. And on the other end, for Darlie coming to see him, it's like looking at Devin. When she sees Darin, she was reminded of Devin. So they knew they couldn't go any further with their relationship. They say that it was mutual, but Darlie had been asking for a divorce.
None of that sounds very good in terms of insurance fraud or anything like that. There's also a rumor that behind Darlie's back, Darin called her a fat pig. He
Called her that behind her back. He told her that to her face. There's a read Karen Neal's testimony. She heard it. He didn't do it behind her back.
He's the one that really urged her to get rid of that extra 12 pounds after she had Drake. Do I think Darin is a suspect? I do think Darin is a suspect. I don't think that Darin stabbed his own children, but I do think that he set it up to appear like a robbery. The perps came in and saw the boys laying on the ground and thought, well, we can't leave any witnesses. I think their plan was maybe to rape Darlie, maybe to kill her, who knows. But I certainly don't think their plan was to kill the boys. But that's what happened that night.
We learned way too much about Darin. So now we're going to do our first of the episode. Is he sus or not? Is he suspicious or not? So we're going to take a poll among ourselves and decide if we think he's a suspect, like a viable one, and what our reasons are. And then later, after this episode releases, we're going to put a poll up on the social media so you guys can tell us who your top suspects are.
Excited.
Jones, why don't you tell us if you think Darin is one of your top suspects and why?
I don't believe that Darin was part of stabbing his children. I don't believe he attacked Darlie, but I think he knows more than he ever told. Now, does he know the perps? Maybe. I think the perps thought they were entering into an empty house. They see Darlie lying on the couch and think, okay, no big deal.
I have to know the perps. All right? If what you're saying, what do you think? These people were just overheard Darin saying this and took it upon themselves to go break in his house and steal his stuff and then get with him later and say, hey, we're the guys that stole your stuff, man. We want you to split with us.
We'll rape her. And then they happen to notice the two boys asleep on the ground. And they think, we cannot leave any witnesses. So,
Boys are asleep. They're not witnesses. They're asleep.
let's just stab them. So, yes, I think Darin's more involved than he ever let on, but I don't think he's the one that wielded the knife.
So you think he's sus?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Sully, what do you think?
I actually pretty much agree with Jones. I don't think he wielded the knife, but I think he is up there for suspects. I mean, who do they look to when someone in the house has been killed? If a woman's been killed in the house, who is the first suspect? The
husband always did it.
Right. I do think that him messing around in this criminal world to whatever depth, unfortunately, came back to...
So the guy does a little coke. Like I said, heroin. You know, Sully, you did heroin at 12 years old. And you want to talk about somebody else's criminal element. Heroin and meth at 12 years old. So maybe we shouldn't listen to you because you're into some kind of criminal element, right? How'd you get your heroin? By doing podcasts, protecting killers? Fuck out of here, man.